You either haven't heard about AI agents yet, or you're scared they'll take your job. Today, we'll demystify it with one of the leading experts on future of work and how AI agents will shape our future workplace. So, let's go. Awesome, wonderful. So welcome to the Intelligence Briefing Live, What's the Buzz, where leaders and hands-on experts share how they have turned hype into outcome. Today, we'll talk about agentic AI and how it's reshaping our jobs forever, and who better to talk to about it than someone who's actively working on that and thinking about that. Dan Södergren. Hey Dan, thank you so much for joining.
Well, thanks very much for being here. And just a quick one, I am definitely Dan Södergren. I am not an AI, nor an AI agent, nor a hologram, or any of those things. I mean, 11 Labs and 𝗕𝗫 are doing brilliant work in this sphere, but I promise you, this is me, okay? Just to make it absolutely clear.
Awesome. And they are doing fantastic work. I've been experimenting with them too. You know, my family and friends, they hardly can tell the difference, if they even can. So. But I am real too. So just to get that out there. Now, hey Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do?
So my name's Dan Södergren. I'm a keynote speaker, also a corporate trainer, have been for about 20 years. And I've been for basically more than a decade, been talking about digital transformation and also AI, kind of before, I suppose it was called artificial intelligence. It was called a load of other things. And I then had the joy of, we were just joking off stage that I have the joy of being called a tech futurist, but I'd rather be called a billionaire philanthropist. Tech futurist just means I did stuff far too early in the market. I had an augmented reality company about 20 years ago and did some pretty cool stuff, but I would have been much happier to be a lot richer. So this time I'm kind of riding this wave, so to speak, but I think hopefully I've caught it at the right time. I'm not talking about holograms and things, but AI agents are a part of this future of work. And I wrote a couple of books last year, one called The Fifth Industrial Revolution, which is all about this new thing. Between me and you, I thought we had another year left until we had these AI agents, to be honest with you. So it hasn't necessarily caught me off guard, but the rapid pace of change, as you know, has got quicker and quicker. So yeah, it's even for us tech futurists, this is a pretty freaky time to be in.
That's for sure, right? I remember when, what was it, 2 years ago, we started the first agentic frameworks, baby AGI and what they were called, and then within a couple months or a couple quarters, everybody and tech vendors were jumping on the bandwagon, saying, hey, we've been doing AI and agents all along, and here we are trying to hold on and figure out what is actually real, and you know, what does it mean?
Yeah.
So folks, for those of you in the audience, if you're just joining the stream, drop a comment in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm always curious to see how global our audience is. And also don't forget to pick up your copy of the AI Leadership Handbook so you can turn technology hype into business outcomes in your company. But now with all of that out of the way, Dan, what do you say? Should we play a little game to kick things off?
Go on then. Yeah, I'm slightly scared by this little game. Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Here we go.
If AI were a...
So what? If AI were a vehicle, what would it be? 60 seconds on the clock, go.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. If AI was a vehicle, what would it be? Well, it'd have to have lots of different ways of it being a vehicle. I tell you what, it's a funny one. I could say something like a submarine, because you don't really see it coming until it's too late. So maybe a submarine. What I wouldn't want it to be, and this is the temptation to say I don't want it to be a Tesla, but that's just kicking Elon Musk. And you know, obviously he owns Grok, so it's kind of linked in between the two. I'm going to go with, if it was a submarine, I'm going to go for submarine. Does that count as a vehicle?
I think it counts. If I may overgeneralize, I hear a British accent, so it might be a yellow submarine, or something like that. Playing to the stereotypes. I hope you forgive me.
Well, to be honest with you, I think the Beatles, well, it links in, doesn't it? Didn't the Beatles do an AI tune a bit ago, and Paul McCartney did? So there you go. Yes. Even yellow submarine people are doing it.
Right. So awesome. Great response. Submarine. I don't know if I could be stuck underwater for 3 months or something. That takes a lot, right? think of all the news that you'd be missing in everything that'd be happening in those 3 months, right? Crazy.
Well, I always wondered, so they don't have, I mean, we're most probably diversified too much. I wonder if they still have, they most probably don't have Wi-Fi, do they? God, what a terrifying idea to be under the water doing that for that long. You'd have to be a certain type of person.
That's, yeah. Good question. I know 20, 30 years ago, there was no communication, radio silence.
Oh, so, of course. Yeah, of course. Oh, God. So, well, then AI is nothing like submarines. So that was a terrible thing to say. That was a terrible metaphor.
No. But I mean, you know, things happen in stealth and then they come out and we're surprised.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. Like Agentic AI. There you go.
Exactly. So, you know, we've been talking about the future of work for more than a decade. I remember those early conversations, 2015, 16-ish, of how awesome things were going to be. And not only would we all spend our days at the beach while some other things are doing the work for us, but even in a more serious context, that we would see work being done differently. And, you know, I've always perceived that as a change in how we organize work and how the present day work looks like. But I feel now with agents, we're turning that upside down so quickly. And just curious what you're seeing there. What does it mean for people in a business doing this work if these agents can do market research, can take on operational tasks and a whole other host of things? What does it mean in business?
Well, I mean, number one, I think it's most probably, you know, the old classic. I used to start all my law essays with this, with the 𝗁𝗲𝗰𝗿𝗏 quote, which is without definition, there can be no inquiry, right? You know, because you can't really. One of the big things we have in AI, and I think in the tech world, is that we presuppose that everybody knows what we're talking about and that everyone's talking about the same thing, right? Yep. So we've been talking about AI agents for a very long time, but then people say, oh, well, of course, we've got an AI agent. It's a chatbot. And it's like, that might not be an AI agent, but I can see where you're going with that, right? And you might say, well, technically, isn't she, you know, ChatGPT is an AI agent? Well, no, it's not. And that's why the definition is important. So if you kind of define it much more around, I don't know if you agree with me, but, you know, adaptability and being autonomous and those kind of things is more important in this kind of AI agentic world. Only because I did a poll on LinkedIn. I think it's 22% of people didn't know what an AI agent was. So I was like, if I'm going to talk about it, let's at least define it. So I think if you look to that, being autonomous and adaptability, but also being able to do almost doing an objective rather than a task, if that makes sense. You know, like, you know, as I used to say, a bit of a cliche thing, but kind of jobs may shift, but, you know, but skills uplift. It's the same thing with AI now. It's now got a new skill set. It's now got a new ability. Yeah. So now AI agents have the potential of doing an objective, a full objective, not quite, I don't think quite a full job, but a full objective, right? Rather than just a task. So they are very different to chatbots. They are very different to GPT. They are very different base. And I don't know if you've seen, and you will have seen, of course, because you're an expert in it too, but you know, the stuff that's coming over from China with Manus and all these other things, and even with Operator and these other things, it's now astounding what AI agents can do. And even though we talked about me coming on the show, I think it was a couple of months ago, even in those couple of months, it's fundamentally changed what I would have said, because now we're at a place which I didn't think we'd be at for at least 6 months to a year. You know, so now AI agents are in that bit. You know, we did again another cliche, but you know, AI won't replace you, but somebody using AI will, which like we used to say. It's now actually AI might be using itself to replace you. You know, and so you know, and I think that's the thing. So from a leadership point of view, it's fundamentally different. I talked about this in the book I wrote earlier this year, which was the kind of like a how-to guide. It was called Leadership in the Times of AI. The point at the end of that book, and I had the joy of writing with about 15 other AI and security experts. The bit at the end of that book was talking about that. How do we as leaders? We have to fundamentally change, because we've now got potential of people having. It's almost like they're their own company. Now, I used to joke that it was a bit like, how do you manage the Avengers? You know, they've all got superheroes and they've all got superpowers, right? But now it's like, how do you manage one person who potentially is 5 people or is potentially a company in their ability? Because everybody now, almost everybody now who has a good computer and a good computer understanding and has been trained in this stuff can start potentially building AI agents. And that's only happened in the last couple of weeks. Now that's fundamentally terrifying from an employee point of view, from an employer point of view and an employee. the potential of it, it's like nuclear power. The potential of it is astounding. You know, it could save the world, but it could also destroy the planet. You know, it's the same. It's now the same principle. So I think
that's a pretty broad spectrum. That's for
yeah,
sure.
Exactly, of outcomes. But just like we talked about with the submarine thing, now we're talking about nuclear submarines, right?
Now,
Yeah.
Dan, I see a question in the chat from Kerry, and he's asking, what are your thoughts on transferring or sharing decision-making with models and how we think about accountability to our stakeholders? I think that fits nicely into that business discussion.
It's a fantastic question. And I think this is the biggest thing now for not just employees, but employers, right? You know, a month ago, it was what's our AI policy? Oh, now it's going to have to be what's our AI agent policy? It's actually what's our employee policy, and actually what's our employee contract? And we have to, and by the way, I would love the government to doing this, but governments move too slowly. We are now in this world where we have to start to question pretty much everything about IP, pretty much everything around privacy, pretty much everything around anything that you now do. Yeah. So you have this big thing now, and I've got to be careful with words because this is getting a bit too futuristic, but it's only in a couple of months, right? There will need to become a conversation about who owns the agent. Yeah. If you've built an agent on a company laptop with company information, but it was you doing the work to build the agent, who owns the outcome? Yeah. Now, you know, this is, you know, the nice thing about it is these agents will take the grind, yeah, and then human beings will manage them and kind of refine. So I'm talking about as individuals, we've got to become a lot more mindful about what we do, much more mindful about what we do, and are actually more strategic than ever. Because actually what you're doing now is going to echo for a generation, and you might feel that silly, but the data that you're going to be producing in your job, is that your intellectual property? And the old argument, of course, is no. But it's weird, isn't it? This is a great question. It's like, if I create a great prompt at work, what's my incentive to share the prompt? Yeah. And at the moment, there's no way. You don't go, oh, you get a bonus of £1,000 because you did a great prompt. But I know we laugh a bit, right? We laugh, but it should be. You know, when we all worked in factories and someone came up with a great idea to make the factory better, they got money because they came up with a great idea. This is how it works, right? Now we've got this bit where we're talking about knowledge. There aren't the incentives in place right now to really reward people. Now, if you're clever enough to start coding an agent which does your job for you, are you still doing that job? Now, that's a big question.
You know, I think you bring up an excellent point, and I haven't heard anybody else articulate it at all, and definitely not in the same way. And that is, if you are an employee at a company, you come in with a certain knowledge, you gain knowledge, but once you leave, you take that experience with you to whatever other company or venture you go into. To your point, if you build an agent and that agent stays with the company, what happens to that knowledge that either you have transferred into it in building that agent? If you leave, right? If you're an employee today, you leave, there are no agents, then your knowledge is gone. It's no longer accessible for the company beyond what you've documented. But if this agent continues to do work for the company, you've built and conceived it and fed it with your insights and your previous knowledge even. Exactly, right?
But I know this is what we're, no, and it's not quite the same as when it was a human being, because, and I used to joke, and I still think it's true, you know, AI is just automated interns. That's what it should stand for, right? You know, you've got an intern that you have to train, and that's how you get better at the AI getting better. It's not just prompt engineering, it's managing the AI, right? Now, with that moment, if your apprentice then moves on and the apprentice becomes the master, like, where's the situation then? So as human beings, we've got to learn to manage AI before the AI manages us. And that's where we are right now. Now, the question for everybody is if the productivity increases are huge, what happens to the future of work? Because if an AI agent can do some of your job and then starts doing 50% of your job, is your job to manage the agent? And the answer is yes, by the way. I do not believe that we should take human beings out of this equation. I do not believe they should be they can be autonomous, but they can't not be managed. They must be managed with human experiences, human emotions. Otherwise, we are in a huge amount of danger, not just from, as you know, ethically, but you know the reason why, because of hallucinations, etc. But it's a big question we've all got to ask ourselves is, you know, we are managing the machines that will take on most of the work, but we have to manage the machines.
That's right. And let me build on that, because I think we're seeing a lot of these return to office mandates. We're seeing CEOs ordering their staff back. At the same time, we're seeing layoffs, and we need to prepare for AI and trim our workforce, have more capital to invest. Is that the future of work? And to your point, right? I was discussing that with 𝗕𝗨𝗿𝗿𝗍 a couple of weeks ago on the show. Will we all have multiple jobs? Because now agents do 50% here, and we ideally, maybe not, have 50% more time. Do we need a second job to cover the other 50% and the other 50% of the income?
Well, it's again, in the book, the Fifth Industrial Revolution, I talk about the 4 different intelligences that we're going to need. We need artificial intelligence, taken as a given. I think we need more emotional intelligence, ironically enough, as the hard skills become diminished, the soft skills go up, right? We're going to need to be more cooperative and nicer to each other, because the people who aren't very nice will basically not have jobs, because the people who are kind of technically great lawyers but aren't very nice as people will not be lawyers anymore, because the technically great lawyers are actually the AI machines. This is the irony of the whole thing. Anyway, that's emotional intelligence. I lack emotional intelligence. So I'm not saying this because I'm really emotional intelligent. I'm not. I lack emotional intelligence. I just recognize the fact is going to be important. The third one was independent intelligence, and that brilliantly leads into what you were saying about this, which I believe will become, we'll have more gig economy kind of work and more fractional work. The job for life is gone, but I actually think the job for the year might be, very, very soon upon us. And again, that becomes a massive thing about who trains who. If you're not training up, what happened to loyalty? But again, remember, these are all concepts. So in the 5th Industrial Revolution, which we're in, a lot of those concepts will disappear, because actually your manager will realize that they are, well, if middle managers still exist, that you've got an amazing amount of power, and actually employees are more important. Highly productive and highly flexible employees are more important than they thought they were before, right? Now, the other thing is, which you just put on, was organizational intelligence. And we've got to become cleverer. We've got to do more with less. It is likely that we're going to have much smaller businesses, not much bigger. And it's very likely we're going to have some hyper successful businesses, which are tiny businesses. Now, if you look online and you're massively geeky around AI stuff, you already know this is happening because of vibe coding. And you already know this is happening because people are making mobile games and making silly amounts of money with only one person, right? But you're going to have, Sam Altman talked about the first business, well, very soon we'll have a billion turnover company of just one person. But that's because they'll have 50 agents or 100 agents, right, or 1,000 agents, right?
And to me, that brings up another good point about middle management, right? To what extent will we still have or need middle management, or will there be orchestrator agents in that sense, orchestrating the work between other agents and people that supervise them?
Well, absolutely. Well, we've got to remember as well, we've got to be careful, because I imagine there's quite a few middle managers on the call, perhaps, I don't know. But it is a job, I've got to be careful. Right, so that job will disappear, yeah, but it will just shift. So basically, we'll shift the role, but we'll keep the goal. Like the goal of middle management will still exist, but middle managers might not, right? Also, we might be able to give this stuff to lots more of the AIs. And if you have a load of data, and this is why I built something called 𝗕𝗨𝗭𝗭 a few years ago with 𝗕𝗨𝗭𝗭𝗵𝗐. And the idea behind that is that you could most probably quantify company culture and help company culture through data points. Now, that can now be built really quick with AI, which is why we didn't get a third round of funding, because it didn't have a moat anymore, because AI can do it through 3 or 4 different prompts and maybe a little bit of knowledge base, and you could build it with a customizable GPT. Now, we'd spent 300,000 trying to build our own system, and OpenAI just said, "Oh, have this one for free, and you can just use a prompt." Awesome, great for them, not great for us, right? Same principle here is, if you have all that data and knowledge, do you need middle management as much anymore? Now, I would think the answer is no, but you still need a human being, because some of that stuff is too nuanced for a machine. Right. But what if the machine is managing machines? Now that's different, because the nuance therefore isn't needed, because the machine's never going to be cross. The machine will never say, "I'm not working anymore, I'm going to leave," because the machine doesn't have emotions. Then you don't need emotional intelligence. You need a lot of artificial intelligence. And that's where we are now. We're in this world potentially where, and by the way, this is terrifying in some respects, that the middle managers are machines that are managing the machines. And really, you only have the bosses of the machines. But what if you're the boss of the machine? And that's the point, isn't it? You know, what if you're a super powerful accountant because you've got 10 accountants in your company, but it's not a company, it's just 10 agents?
To me, that's both, right? Like you said, exciting, thinking about where does this actually go, so you can properly prepare and also see where the opportunities are. And on the other hand, a little bit frightening too, because where do we stay and remain as people? And what does it mean to our identities, to our knowledge, to how we see ourselves, and how we've been, you know, trained to work, how work has been done for, you know, decades or 200 years.
But we have to remember that. I'm sure we used to work in the fields, right? 95% of us used to work. 95% of people worked in the fields, and then when we didn't work in the fields, work didn't stop, did it? I noticed we still work now. We're still working, right? Yeah. But we're just working on different things. Like we used to work in factories, and now not all of us work in factories. We used to work in mines, but now we don't work in mines. And this is the bit that I don't get. This is why I always talk about it like the fifth industrial revolution. When the industrial revolution happens, this massive shift happens, right? So the work hasn't gone, it's just the tasks move on, right? Yeah. So all you're going to be doing is managing a machine to do more of your work for you. Now, the bigger question for us all, and by the way, I think this is a brilliant question, is what happens to that excess productivity? Now, that's a great question. Like, where does the money go? Like, if I literally had a slight argument with someone this morning on this, and they're absolutely right to say it, but I'd never thought of it like this because I just hadn't thought of it like this. They were like, if I become 400% quicker at marketing and better at marketing, I don't make 400% more money because my employer will pay me the same. They'll just fire 3 of us.
And that's where I think the difference between corporate employment and freelancing or running your own business comes in. If you're an independent and you can do 4x the work that you've previously done, that means you can, or you do it 4 times faster, that means you can do 4 projects. And even if your rate doesn't go up, you scale.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even if it's not times 4, it's times2, it still works. Right? It still works. Yeah. Right? But okay, and then this is the thing about same thing, which is why I like to call AI, apprentices, automated interns. Same principle, isn't it? If I had all this and then I got 5 interns, would I have a better company? Well, it depends how well I manage the interns, doesn't it? And it depends how well I do prompt engineering. It also means if I pick the right AI, because so many people use AI and say, well, I've used ChatGPT and I didn't really like it. It didn't do what I wanted it to, therefore it's rubbish. Well, that's because you haven't used Claude. That's because you haven't downloaded Mistral. That's because you haven't, it's like horses for courses. Every one of these things is different. And also you haven't trained your AI in the first place. So it's on you because you have, but also you haven't been trained how to use AI. And that's why I teach people now how to use AI, because actually it's been going so quickly that people have just had a go, but haven't been trained in it. Well, you remember when computers first came out, you had to be trained how to use a computer. Like, it's like, thinking you can blag your way through AI is potentially quite dangerous, but also it's on your employer to train you in how to use AI. That's what we should do. And you'll be amazed, the low rates of adoption in the UK are actually to do with the fact that there's so many small businesses. Most large businesses now have done AI and have done a bit of AI training. They've got an AI policy. You might be surprised how many don't actually have an AI policy. It's terrifying, actually. Anyway, but a lot of small businesses don't do the AI training part. Less than 100 people, they haven't done the AI training. And then this is what I talk about in the book. There's this whole thing called the secret cyborg that are turning up and doing the work on a different computer or logging in with a different browser.
That's right.
But they're doing it on systems that are free because you're not paying the £20 a month. Well, that's really bad. It's like not giving someone a laptop when they turn up to work, or not giving them a chair, or not giving them a mobile phone, whatever it is. You've got to spend the money. If we've got leaders on the call, I implore you, spend the money, not only researching and doing some training on yourself and your own mindset, but also on what's the best AI out there that your people can use. Do not presume it's ChatGPT, because it isn't. It very rarely is. But anyway, I'm not here to bash ChatGPT. I'm very happy to bash 𝗕_𝗿𝗏 because I still think it's rubbish. I'm only joking. Microsoft, I'm only kidding. I love what you do. I love what you do. I did a lot of work with Microsoft. They're good people sometimes. But, we have to be careful with presupposing that everyone should buy into the ChatGPT thing, when actually there are some amazing large language models out there that are much better at things like marketing. And like, as you know yourself, Claude's much better at marketing than ChatGPT is. But anyway, that's an aside.
I see an interesting question from Dieter, and I'd love to take a stab at it, but also get your perspective. And Dieter is asking, what would you recommend to students who to prepare for this future? And I teach at the local university. I teach management information systems, and as part of that, we have been talking about AI for different cohorts and semesters. And last fall, I started incorporating Gen AI and prompt engineering and a bit of AI literacy in my class to say, hey, look, here are examples of AI. Here's how you can try it out. Google Teachable Machine. Here's how you generate an image. Here's how you use ChatGPT and Claude, and here are different techniques to get students to warm up to the technology and use it if they haven't already done so. Right? That's another thing. Many have used it before, but then I think the interesting part where I have conversations with fellow professors is, well, how do we evaluate what students actually learn and retain and do? And I think it's due that we change those assessments, right? It's not necessarily about the output you generate, but if you're able to assess, is this good? Is this specific? Why is it good? Why is it not good? How can you make it better? And what was your thought process going into it? So to me, that is something we need to change and to teach. What's the thought process? The outcome, right?
I'll give you a great example there, because I use it all the time. I also have a non-for-profit which I run with a friend of mine who's a teacher, and it's called the AI Teacher Course. The AI marketing course I run and my training company I run, but the AI Teacher Course is a non-for-profit, and we go around trying to help teachers use AI, right? But one of the biggest things actually is the mind shift here. And I always use this example, like years and years ago, I'm this old, you didn't have calculators. It took 13 years for calculators to come inside UK schools. But teachers literally wanted to ban them forever. And then, of course, we then had this revolution where they realized actually it's no bad thing they're bringing a piece of technology. Actually, it's great. So maths changed in the way it was taught because you had to show your workings and had to work out other things, right? So the calculator was a tool, but it wasn't such a tool that it destroyed the education point, because it couldn't have been. It's the same thing here. It's like AI is a tool. It's not a rule. Like, it's not that powerful that it should overtake everything. But if you're just assessing people on their ability to write an essay, that's fundamentally dangerous, because the AI can now write the essay. But we shouldn't be doing that anyway. That's why education has to change. Now, but to answer the gentleman's question, it's the soft skills, not the hard skills, we've got to be teaching the next generation, because actually it's the questions and the creative question and the analytical thinking behind this. Like, AI is brilliant, but you've got to know how to ask the right questions of it to get the right responses. Now, that critical questioning, that is something that I don't think we teach enough in schools. We also don't teach enough in schools things like entrepreneurship, or how to be nice, or how to budget, or just life skills stuff. And I actually know that being nice is going to be more important, because the grunt work, the grinding work is got what the AI is going to do. As I always say, we've got to be more mindful, less grindful. We've got to not be thinking, I'm going to work really hard on this, because actually the machine will do the hard work for you. Yeah. And that changes everything. Whether are we ready as a society? I mean, as businesses, we've got to be, because that's how businesses work and make money, right? And we can only blame ourselves and the leadership if we don't change our mindsets. But as a society, are we ready for a new world where you can love what you do, and therefore, because as I talked about in my TEDx talk, the future of work isn't what you think, it's most probably what you love. But are we ready for that in society? Are we ready for people that have to be engaged and love their work to actually get paid? I'm not sure I hope we are, because that's the fifth industrial revolution. But yeah, I think to take a hold of an advantage of that, we've got to fundamentally change how we educate people, including ourselves.
Now, Dan, let me ask you this before we wrap it up for today. With all this change coming and all that uncertainty and again, rapid change, or orders of magnitude of bigger change than what we've been used to, what makes you hopeful about that future with AI and for the future of work?
The reason why I'm so excited by it is because now we have a potential where in a kind of odd way, the means of production are now in the hands of the workers, which sounds a bit weird, but basically we can start creating our own destinies. We can do things now with AI that have been a madman's dreams before. We could have not done all this stuff before. My concern would be that the governments and slightly bigger people in power might start to corrupt some of that, or even start to delimit it and say, actually, you can't have AI anymore and take it off us. But right now, you've got the ability to take an LLM and put it into your own machine and to actually build your own agents and build your own AIs right now. Now, that's very exciting, because that means that a lot of the cognitive load that you would normally have to do for your job can be done by a machine, which means that the 50% of your time can be done to do either more high value work, which I think inherently is more fun for human beings, or even better, have more time out to see your family and friends. Because actually society is going to need us to actually be more present with our loved ones and society than it is going to be present at work. But you can only do that if the AI does your work for you and you can manage the AI. And that's why I'm excited by the future of work. It's not because I'm excited by AI. I'm excited by what AI can do for human beings to make the world and hopefully their own lives a better place. But I am a massive hippie. So who knows? I might just be a techno-optimist. But honestly, I see it as being something that changes society in a very, very positive way. And if I didn't, I wouldn't do the job that I do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Dan, maybe before we wrap up, what are the 3 key takeaways for our audience today from our conversation that you'd like to
I would think that they have to start to retrain to retain. So really start thinking about how do you train your people up, and including yourself. You know, because at the end of the day, that evolution is really to do with your own mindset. So how are you going to train your people up? How are you going to train yourself up and change the mind shift? And then the big one for me around this whole 5th industrial revolution point is how are you going to manage the resources in the business so it can fully take advantage of this moment? You know, I think a lot of people at the moment are thinking AI can just do stuff without time, money, and energy. It can't. It cannot. But if you put the time in, and if you put the energy in, and you put some money into it, you will fundamentally change your business, and then hopefully change the world for yourselves and your family and everyone else. So as long as we're mindful that it's not a magic bullet and we go shim sham and the agents will do it all, I think we'll be okay.
Right. Wonderful. All right, Dan, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your experience with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful. All right, and for those of you in the audience, thanks for joining us as well, and see you next time for another round of What's the Buzz. Thank you. Bye-bye.